Hey, good afternoon, everyone. It's Cole Johnson here with Mojo with Cojo. Today is February 16th, 2025, about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I have my friend and coworker Sara Hillyard with me here today. She's agreed to be on the podcast. Sara, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course, of course. So you are my second female veteran that has agreed to be on the podcast. So obviously, to the listening audience, to the folks that are out there listening or watching or doing whatever it is you're doing, if you would like to be on the podcast, or you have questions about the podcast or anything like that, just give me a shout on Facebook, or you can send a email to cole.johnson1205 at gmail.com. Again, cole.johnson1205 at gmail.com. So we'll go ahead and jump into Sara's bio, and then we'll jump into the questions. After graduating high school from Portville, New York, Sara Hillyard completed basic training at Fort Jackson, South Carolina, followed by advanced individual training at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, where she was trained as a chemical operations specialist. Her military service include assignment at Fort Bliss, Texas, with Third Battalion, Second Air Defense Artillery, and at Fort Hood, Texas, with the Third Armored Cavalry Regiment in 2010. She deployed to Contingency Operation Station Kalzu in Iraq as part of Operation New Dawn. Hillyard holds an associate's degree in human resources from Jamestown Community College and a bachelor's degree in human services from Empire State College. While stationed at Fort Hood, she participated in the installations boxing tournament. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Program while with the 3rd Army Armored Cavalry Regiment. After her military service, Hillyard helped run the veteran peer-to-peer program in Allegheny County, as well as PFC Dwyer program in Cattaraugus County, New York. Hillyard relocated to Evans, Georgia with her husband Jared and their two sons, Landon and
Isaiah.
Isaiah. Okay, I wasn't.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Inspired by her own experience, Hillyard helped start the Positive for Heroes program in the Central Savannah River area, or the CSRA, aiming to give back to the initiative that profoundly impacted her life.
Yes.
Outstanding. So, what is, if can I go off topic a little bit, and can I ask you what what is what was your chemical operations specialist? What is that? Did you work with like fucking chemical like agents and stuff? Like,
Okay, listen. So I go into maps, and prior to that, you know how you like go in and you see the recruiter? And in 2006, they would show you these amazing videos. Like the recruiters were like, they were the best. So they were wild. Okay. So they showed me this video and it was like, oh, you could be like this parachute rigger, you could be this. I didn't do great on the ASVABs. It's fine. It's okay, totally. Um, but they were like, this is chemical operations specialists. And I was like, okay. So I watched the video and like they were in lab coats. And I was like, listen, I didn't do good on the ASVABs, but apparently I'm supposed to be like a chemical engineer, you know? Like that's how I felt. No, no. So, chemical operations specialist, you're in charge of the gas masks. You're in charge of the yearly going into the gas chamber.
oh shit,
Um,
okay, that's cool.
so a lot of the time I spent working in the orderly room in both Fort Hood and Fort Bliss. And I was
Oh
my
no.
first sergeant's driver for a little bit. I drove
Oh
around
cool.
NCOs because it's really not, but I thought I was going to blow stuff up. And I didn't
Yeah.
blow anything up.
Or
I didn't
melt
get
something down or something.
I didn't get to do any of those things. So it
That's
sounds
cool.
pretty outrageous, but it's pretty simple. It's a pretty
The
simple job.
it's funny that you talk about the recruiters, because I joined in 2007. So when I joined, the video, it wasn't like your stereotypical Marine Corps recruiting video that my recruiter showed me. So it was this video I think it was 310 whenever they went through Fallujah the first time,
Okay.
and it was a homemade video from a Marine that was on the ground during the invasion of Fallujah, and it was like people fucking blowing up. I mean, tanks, like dudes standing right next to the tank, watching the tank blow this fucking massive hole, and then it had this song by Seether. That was the overall like composition of the for the music for the video, and that when he showed me that video, I was like, you got me.
This is where I'm supposed to be in life.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
yeah, it's funny that you talk about the recruiting videos because
Yeah, they
I
were
got the
like,
exact opposite.
yeah, they were doing real good back then. They were getting all of us to get in, for
Yeah,
sure, for sure.
yeah. Well, thanks again for being here. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your hectic day to sit down with us and with me and kind of share your story. And
Absolutely.
like had talked to you before, like I don't want you to, or I don't want anyone to feel like they have to get like share like deep dark secrets or anything like that. This is your story. This is not my story. So I don't want you to. The point of this is for people to feel comfortable. So you
Right,
can
right.
share as little or as much as you want. I mean, the only thing that I would say is, just I would just say, like if you think that some things could be triggering to others, I
Right.
would, maybe not go into much, detail regarding those things. But other than that,
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, I want you to feel comfortable, and I want you to say what's on your heart, and and then we'll go about it that way. Is that cool?
Okay. Awesome.
All right, cool beans. All right, so the first question is, how was your childhood?
Um, so I had a good childhood. My
Yes.
parents divorced when I was young. I was super close with my dad and close with my mom. My mom got remarried, to my stepdad. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, um, at that point when she was married. And my stepdad was a funeral director. My dad,
Oh,
yeah, yeah. My dad was a truck driver.
oh wow.
So, and then my mom, when they got remarried, there were two siblings that I have, from that marriage. So, half brother and sister, and they were younger than me, 10 years. And then from a previous marriage, my dad had had two daughters who I actually have nieces and nephews that are like my almost my own age. So
Oh wow.
there was a lot of
A very
yeah.
mixed family, to say the
Yeah,
least.
very, very mixed. Very mixed. So they were, they were grown up when I was a
Yeah.
baby. So I'm still not like super close to them, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
Um I lived in Pennsylvania for most of my life. I actually went to school in Bradford, Pennsylvania, and then we moved across the state line, which is like 5 minutes away, to
Yeah.
Olean or to Portville.
Ugh.
Um, yeah, and then went to school at Portville Central School with the same 80 people, I think, that went from like kindergarten all the way through. And I was in
Yeah.
10th grade at that point. Um, but yeah, I think I did. I had a great childhood, normal like teenage girl drama,
Mhm.
simple like, but yeah, I was born into a, very blessed. I can say that for sure. Yeah.
What was it like going to school at such a small, because I kind of come from the same kind of
Yeah.
background
Yeah.
as far as like smaller schools. Like I went to school in Fort White, Florida, which is the middle of fucking nowhere, Florida, with dirt roads, and like I've said on a couple podcasts before, like it was legit. It had one red light, a post office, and two gas stations at the
Yeah.
time. So what was it like, if you don't want to, or if you don't mind sharing, what was it like kind of going to like a small kind of school?
School. So even Bradford was tiny. So I had not like known anything outside of small. I just knew that once I was done there, that was not where I needed to be. I didn't
Yeah.
want to be there. I wanted to, I like almost like a gypsy soul. I've always
Mm,
like loved to just go and see and do, and so I knew that that was not my final destination. I didn't want to get stuck there. Um, but it was, I guess, coming in like 10th grade, it was weird too because people had already established like their cliques and I made friends, but it was different going from one little school to another little school. I still had missed my friends over in Bradford, but it was so close that you could go and visit. You know what I mean?
Nice.
Whenever you wanted to. And my dad still lived on the Pennsylvania side, so that was, I went back and forth. I would go to him on the weekends, and then during the week I'd be with my mom. So,
Nice. Very
yeah,
nice.
yeah.
Um, did you ever go like cow tipping or anything like that when you were a kid?
Um, no, I did. I had a friend
Any
that,
tractor pulls?
tractor, listen, now at Portville, they would ride tractors to
I
school,
yeah.
and then people would set like lawn chairs out before school and like their big trucks, and you'd like sit out in the parking lot and like BS with everybody. So
That's
that
funny.
was, I mean, yeah, it's pretty, it's pretty
Yeah.
redneck, you know.
W-
Um,
Were you a member of the FFA?
I was not a member of the FFA.
So
No, no.
I was for
Okay,
a
I
couple
love that for
years.
you.
Oh, I mean, I hated school, but I didn't want to like I come from a pretty uh checkered upbringing, we'll say.
Okay, okay.
But so I didn't want to be home. Like anything I could do, play baseball, FFA, weightlifting, whatever I could do to not be home, I was doing it. But
Yeah.
yeah, I the whole FFA thing for me was again just an escape, but like I never got into like the raising the pigs and the goats and the cows and all that stuff. I think I maybe went to like one state fair maybe once.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's always that was I look back at it now and I'm like, what the fuck? But
Yeah. No, and when I got there, I was big. Like I always like to work, to do
mm,
something. I refused to drive when I was like 16. Everybody else wanted to drive, but I was like,
yeah.
nope, I don't want to drive. Like, but I worked at a local grocery store and I worked at a pizza place and I absolutely loved it. I thought, oh my gosh, like it's just, yeah. So I get it. Like when you're young too, I think you want to be out of the house.
Mm.
Um, I swam for the swim team for a little while, but I tore my rotator cuff, so that
Oh
didn't
wow.
work out. And I enjoyed like, just hanging out with friends and stuff like that. But no, I was never a part of the farm animal community. I mean, I've always, I'd hate chickens. I'm terrified of chickens. That's
Oh,
like, I'd like that to be on the record. I do not like them. They
very
perch up
well.
on stuff and like, I feel like they're gonna come at you. So,
Yeah.
but I knew a lot of people that had farms.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I don't mind the
Tobacco.
bigger livestock. So that's
Yeah.
like just the chickens. That's the only thing I'm like not cool with. I'm not, I don't, no.
Nice. Yeah, I'm not really big on farm animals in general. I mean, I don't mind looking at cows and horses and shit like that, but like
Yeah. Yeah.
everything else, I'm like they're all fucking disgusting if you ask me. But anyway,
Right.
that's just me. So why did you join the military?
All right. Wild story. Um, I was
Did
working
you
at the
listen to
pizza
my
place.
Oh, I haven't posted my I did my story yesterday with my buddy
Okay.
Paul. He interviewed
Okay.
me. So I'll
Okay.
post my story in a couple weeks, but when I do that, you'll have to listen to mine because I thought my story was wild as far as like going to the recruiter and all that stuff was concerned. So I'm curious to hear
Okay. All
your
right.
crazy story.
So I worked at this place at the mall called Renna's Pizza. It was my senior year. I wasn't totally sure what I wanted to do. Part of me, I honestly wanted to go to live in the city. I wanted to go to New York City and I wanted to go to the Fashion Institute. Um, but I wasn't that great at art. So
Mhm.
I like it was just like again trying to get out, trying to
Yeah,
escape, you know.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, but I got you remember ringback tones?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay, so my ringback tone was set to Brad Paisley's Alcohol. That was my ringback tone. I don't know if you
Okay.
guys remember that song. And I was doing dishes, which I hated doing dishes at the pizza place. And I was back there and I heard my phone ring and I get this answer the phone because I didn't recognize the number. And it was this recruiter, and he had a Southern accent. And he was like, "Oh, I love Brad Paisley, yada, yada, yada. This is who I am. Have you ever thought about joining the Army?" And I was like, I know some people that did, but like, he's like, "Well, come down to the recruiting station and we could talk about it." And I'm like, "Well, I'm actually like right around the corner right now, and I'm doing dishes." And I was like, "So you think I could come down like right now?" So I told my boss, like, "Oh, I have this thing with the recruiter. I gotta go. Like, I gotta get out of here." So that is how I literally joined the Army. Kind of, that's been my life has kind of been one of those things. I do things, like I said, I'm kind of a gypsy. I do things without really thinking all the time. And I
Kind of
thought,
spur of the moment.
yeah, this will be a great idea. And then the more that I thought about it, the more I was like, okay, I can get out. I can, and I was going to go try and talk to the Navy recruiter after I talked to the Army recruiter, because then I was excited because I was like, oh,
Mhm.
okay, yeah, I got this. And the recruiter said, "Listen, do you want to see the world in a tiny window outside, like a ship, or do you actually want to see it?" And I was like,
Mhm.
"Man, I'm sold. Let's do the Army. Let's do that. Let's just go for it." So that was really like, yeah, didn't want to do dishes, and here we are.
What was boot camp like? I don't know anything about Army boot camp, so
Um,
can you
so
enlighten us
n
on that?
not knowing a ton about it before going. I mean, I did all the like little like warm up things that
Yeah.
but it was at when I first got there, I had heard like, oh, Fort Relax in Jackson. So I was like, oh, this is gonna be like the best. Like, it's not gonna be that terrible.
Yeah.
And I can remember like getting off the bus, and they have your stuff, like the bags that you have with all of your stuff that you got to put in the wall locker. Because I was a holdover. 'Cause during that time there were so many people going in that like I was at Fort Jackson for probably like a month before actually going to basic training. And
Really?
so we would, oh yeah, we would like
Wow.
wait. We would have like, we'd do PT in the morning, we'd go, and then we would not do anything except have drill sergeants that were not like our drill sergeants yelling at us. And like, it was wild. And
So
then they
you
would
hadn't
tell
even
you when you're,
started boot camp yet,
no, and I was
and you were
supposed to
getting
be
yelled
part of,
at.
yes, and I was supposed to be part of the OSET kind of thing. So I would have had to go to Fort Leonard Wood for basic training to then just go over into, was it called OSET? Is that what it was called? When you like didn't leave that place and you just went to AIT, it was like a whole way through. Like you were literally supposed to go from red phase, which is like the beginning of boot camp,
Uh-huh.
all the way to the end of AIT in the same place. But it didn't work
Oh.
out that way because there were so many people coming in 2006. I mean, I met, they let everybody in,
Yeah.
everybody and their brother. Like
Yeah.
I things, and I had just gotten out of high school from this tiny little town. I met girls that had been to jail. I didn't
Hmm.
have a clue like what that was about. I had met like just so many rando like, and so, but getting off the bus in my actual like where I was going to be for basic training, I remember them wanting to carry all the bags up these stairs. And I lived in this beautiful brand new building. I thought, this is
Barracks.
like, yes,
Yeah.
listen, I mean, it was gorgeous. It was brand new.
Yeah.
Um, and I say that so we can keep that in the back of this little story because
Yeah.
um, I lived at the Taj Mahal and didn't know that I lived at the Taj Mahal at the time.
Yeah.
Um, and I carried all these bags up, got lippy with one of the drill sergeants because they didn't have a hat on, and that was the only way that I knew. At that point, like I understood rank, but I didn't understand rank. I mean, I really kind of threw myself into this.
Yeah.
I didn't have anybody. My uncle was a Marine, but really like nobody else was in the military, so it was kind of
Mhm.
like just new and whatever. Um, and looking back on it, it was tough, but it was definitely I learned that I was very good at, I might not be the best at doing something, but I had a lot of heart, and I was,
Mhm.
and so that was something that like I learned about myself that I didn't know. Um, so yeah, Relax in Jackson was all right. And then after Xmas break, I had to go to AIT at Fort Leonard Wood. And when I tell you I got there and I called my mother and I bawled and I cried because I lived in these barracks that were so old. I had to go and eat at this thing. They were doing I suppose it would be some kind of, I don't know, something to do like statistics on. We ate at this diet defect, like this place, this chow hall had diet food, and the food was horrific. But they would weigh all of us in this company that I was in, and then at the end, in the middle, and then at the end. And I assume that it was to see like did soldiers lose X amount of weight, and it wasn't. You didn't even have to be overweight to be in this program. Like that's where you ate, and everybody else got to eat it like this better. And I had come from like having good food to now like eating granola because it was awful. I'm telling you, it was so bad. And the barracks were so old. And when I was in basic training, I never had to do anything. Like I'd never seen the waxing machine. I had to learn how to wax and strip floors because
Oh, wow.
yeah, I lived at the Taj Mahal, dude. Like when I tell you, it was beautiful. The floors were all like that grainy feeling when I was
Yeah, yeah,
at
yeah.
Fort. Yeah, it was beautiful. The
Yeah.
barracks, the beds, there was nothing that was like nothing was rotting but Fort Leonard that was a different beast. And then, I got bold sometimes, and I got best dressed in high school. Okay. So
Nice.
I used to love, like, I love makeup and like being a girl, like,
Hmm.
so
Yeah.
I would wear lip gloss sometimes. And one time I told the drill sergeant, her name was Drill Sergeant Sun. If you're out there, hi, I just remember you. Because she was like, you can't wear lip gloss. Like, get on. I need you to front lean and rest position. I need you to do push-ups. And I was like, no, it's chap gloss. And she was like, that doesn't exist. And I was like, yeah, it does. My lips are chat. Like
Yeah.
there was a transition.
It's a
I
culture
guess
shock for sure.
yes, yes. It was very different. It was very,
Yeah.
very different. There was a lot going on at Fort Lost in the Woods. That was a time when sometimes we were allowed to do things on the weekends, like because there was nothing planned.
Now
Um,
this is still boot camp, right?
no, this is AIT.
Yeah, okay, okay. So
This
this is
is an
after you
no.
graduated boot
So
camp and you
yeah,
went to.
yeah. So
Okay.
you could like have like weekends where you could
Hmm.
go to like the PX, and so
Yep.
you got to eat like Charlie's, which made my heart so happy because I was so hungry.
What's Charlie's? Or
Charlie's
what was
is
Charlie's?
It's still around. So I live pretty close to Fort Gordon or Fort Eisenhower, whatever they call it now. And Charlie's is at the PX. It's like a sub shop. They have like
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah,
chicken
yeah.
Philly sandwiches. Yeah,
I
like
think I know
just
what you're talking about. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. So those were like the good meals. I remember that, like going to the PX,
Gotcha.
having your little battle buddies going, and yeah, and you felt and the
Semi-normal, semi-human.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. And yeah, it was, and we got to experience Missouri's weather is kind of wild. Like from being from Western New York and Pennsylvania, I thought we had like wild.
Hmm.
Now Missouri is like a different beast. That's like you can see like all four seasons in one day. So that was pretty that was
Yeah,
pretty crazy.
yeah.
But yeah. And then when I was graduating from AIT, my first duty station was Fort Bliss. And we went to AIT which is in El Paso, Texas.
Fort Bliss
Um,
is in El Paso,
Fort
Texas.
Bliss, yes,
Yeah.
right on the border. It borders all three. So there's Texas, New Mexico, and Mexico, and it's all right there. The Sergeant Major Academy is there. Um, really, other than that, it's the Sergeant Major Academy, and then like nothing. So then here I am
Yeah.
at Fort Bliss. I wind up there, um, and that was like again a different world, but it was you could go out into the world, and so I felt like look at all these things that I'm getting to see and all these
Yeah.
different. So that it was cool. You know what I mean? That transition was good. It was
Yeah.
yeah.
Now, so funny story. I'll try to make this quick
Oh yeah, you're fine.
when it comes to me telling a story. So you know how you talked about serving with people that had, been in the prison or jail or whatever.
Yeah,
So I was already like I was in the DEP program, which is like the you sign up to go to Marine Corps boot camp and then you have to wait to go
yeah,
until they pick up the next cycle or whatever.
yep,
So I think it was like a month or so. So I was still back home chilling on the block with the homies and doing my thing. And I had a girlfriend at the time, and we were driving. So I'm in Florida. I'm from Florida originally, and we were on the main interstate, which is Interstate 75 in Florida. And I get pulled over. I'm driving my girlfriend's car at the time. She had this Honda Fit, and it was this little box of a car. So I'm driving it. I get pulled over. I must have been speeding or something like that. State trooper pulls me over, asks me for my driver's license registration. I tell him this is my girlfriend's car, whatever. She gets the registration out. I give him my driver's license. He goes back to his car, runs my shit, comes back, and he's like, "Mr. Johnson, this is gonna go one of two ways." And I was like, "Oh fuck." You can either come with me right now, or you can switch seats, let your girlfriend drive, and go to this court date on such and such date because you're driving with a suspended license. And I was like, well, I didn't know. Like, I honestly had no idea, right?
yeah,
So then I start freaking out because I'm getting ready to go to Marine Corps boot camp. So the last thing I want is like something to fuck that up,
yeah.
or me not be able to go, or something crazy. So fast forward a couple, I don't know, like a week or so after I got pulled over, I told my recruiter what was going on. He came with me to the court date, and I go in front of the judge, and she's like, "Mr. Johnson, what are you doing with your life?" And I was like, "Well, ma'am, to be honest with you, I'm leaving to go to Marine Corps boot camp in a week." And she was like, "Okay, well, if and my recruiter was there, and he vouched for me and all that stuff." And she threw the case out, like nothing ever came of it or whatever. So then fast forward to boot camp. I'm in boot camp, and it had to have been like first phase, or maybe it was during second phase of boot camp, because Marine Corps boot camp is the longest boot camp there is.
Yeah.
So it had to have been, I don't know when it was. It may have been second phase because I don't know, I don't remember, but this staff sergeant came to me in when I was in boot camp, and he was like, Recruit Johnson, do you know why I'm coming to speak with you? And I was like, I have no idea, Staff Sergeant, what's going on? And he was like, you had unpaid court costs from your court date, and if that doesn't get paid, like you might have to go away. And I was like, what does that mean? And I was like, unpaid court costs. Like I literally was in front of the judge for 10 minutes. I didn't have representation, like they didn't give me a lawyer or anything like that. So long story short, my unofficial grandfather essentially paid, it was like $300 or $400 for this unpaid court costs or whatever. So he was like, if you don't ever see me again, then that's good. But if I come back, then there might be a problem. And I was like, okay. And then never saw him again. So like that whole thing about being, serving with, because
Yeah.
the Marine Corps was taking anybody then too. I mean, they were taking
Oh
convicted
yeah.
felons. You didn't have
Yeah.
to have a high school diploma like you do now. I don't even think
Yep.
you had to have a GED. I think because they were trying to bolster their numbers and stuff. But anyway,
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I did get my license before I left for boot camp.
yeah.
I like to point, yeah, I drove the family van. So I was excited to get a car, like when I got to my first duty station. Terrible driver. I'm not a great driver. It's fine though. I hope someday maybe I'll get a driver. That'd be amazing. I would love that.
A chauffeur.
A chauffeur. It won't happen, but a girl can dream, right?
Yeah. So what? Now you deployed, right?
I did. That was so from Fort Bliss, I went to Fort Hood after Fort Bliss.
And Fort Hood is in Texas too, right? Isn't
Yes,
Fort Hood like where
yes.
like murders and shit take place?
So I was there for the Major Hassan for the Fort Hood shooting
Uh-huh. Oh wow.
in 2009. So that was on November 5th, 2009.
Yeah.
And I was on the other side of post, but we were all on lockdown and yeah,
So
that was a
can you
wild
can you
time.
can you talk a little bit about that? Like what was that like for you?
So it was it was normal work day.
Uh-huh.
We were at the company and there was a call that someone was shooting. And so then you're on lockdown and
Mm-hmm.
then no one knew who was going out to look for him because now Fort Hood is the largest military installation in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to talk about like cow tipping, like you go out into the farmers own like parts of that land. There's farm animal. I mean, it's
I didn't know that.
huge.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it was like one of those things that they would tell me, like if you like killed so say you run into a cattle or whatever, like like with a military vehicle, like you owe them like four generations of cows or something. You know what I mean? Like something wild. And so it's huge. You
Yeah.
have a lot of area to run around to. Like if you're it was a he was a psychiatrist.
Mm-hmm.
And he went into the theater that everybody was getting ready to deploy. They were doing their paperwork or
Mm-hmm.
whatnot, their shots.
Yeah,
They had,
like their
the
workup.
theaters,
Yeah.
yeah, all that stuff
Yeah.
like done in one area. And I guess he just went in and 13 people were killed. And I want to say like 40 or 42 were injured. So when you're on lockdown, like I'm a smoker. I
Mm-hmm.
was a smoker. You weren't allowed to go out. Well, my first sergeant, he was a smoker too. So we like hid and like the smokers like were up against a wall, like
Huddled in a
smoking,
corner,
hiding, like, oh no,
trying to
can't.
trying to
Yeah.
waft it out the
But we had
window.
all our full battle rattle on, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because we didn't know what was happening.
Yeah.
And I think we were locked down until they found him at that night. I know that we were allowed to go home, and I don't remember if it was like it just took so long to go home that it was dark because of
Mm-hmm.
everyone leaving all at the same time, or if it was, that was a long day. It was
Yeah.
very scary. I think that was my first realization of like, wow, the people that you don't know everybody that you serve with. You know what I mean?
Yep.
There's some people that are wild.
Yeah, we had a I didn't serve with a guy. It happened, or I don't know. A Marine in my unit killed a like a little old lady
Ugh.
coming out of coming out of like a, I don't want to say casino, but something along those lines. And
Hmm.
like it's just, and then so we had just got back from Afghanistan, so this is like 2010 time frame,
Hmm.
and there was in the barracks across the quad from where our barracks was, which was French Creek 520. So any of you Marines out there that served on Camp Lejeune, FC 520 is notorious for like that's where like the water treatment plant shit is and all that. So like the whole water thing and all that. But anyway, I was coming into work one morning and it legit was a fucking murder scene. Like there had been a corporal that was on duty the night before was doing doing his rounds,
Yeah.
like you do when you're on duty. And this Marine was playing his music real loud, and after a certain time, like you're not supposed to turn that shit down, right? So he went up to the guy's room, asked him to turn his music down. Dude kind of cocked an attitude, from what I understand, because I wasn't there, but this is all like, you
Hearsay.
know,
Yeah.
well, I mean, yeah. But dude kind of cocked an attitude with him, but he turned it down. Like, I don't know, fast forward maybe an hour. Dude was playing his music again. Corporal went up there to say, hey, turn down your music. And he so if I remember correctly, he somehow incapacitated the corporal, the dude that was playing the music, the other Marine that was playing his music real loud, and so he was on the third story and knocked him over the railing. So the dude fell, I don't know, 100 feet, give or take, maybe. And I don't think he died like on impact,
Right.
but the Marine that was playing his music loud grabbed the fire axe out of the fire thing
Hmm.
and went down and pretty much tried to dispose of the body. And like we come into work and the whole bear like quad is roped off with caution tape, and NCIS is there, and you know different agencies are there, and I was like, what the fuck is going on, man? This is crazy. But
Yeah.
and we had just got back from Afghanistan, so I'm like, fuck, dude. Like we survived Afghanistan just to come back to this.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
anyway, so what was so Fort Hood was now refresh
So
my
like
memory. There
looking back, it wasn't, I feel like it wasn't crazy really until, I mean, there was stuff that went on because it's holds so many different units, so many different regiments, so many different soldiers. You know what I
hmm
mean? So I'm assuming it was one of those like I just didn't know all the things that might have went on prior to, but that the let me back up a little. So Fort Hood is where I boxed. Super fun. I was a terrible boxer though. Listen, like we
Nice.
got to not wear uniforms for like 6 months. We worked out every day, 6 days a week, just not Sundays. Got to
Nice.
learn a lot about all of it. They were picking people for all army. That was not going to be me. The first time I got knocked out, I remember it was probably like a week in, and it was like sparring. And I
Yeah.
got knocked out by this girl, and I thought, I'm going back to my unit. I'm going back to
Yeah.
my unit. I can't, I'd never been hit in the face before. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so I was like, oh no,
So
like doing the,
how did you get picked for that though? Like how did that
so
start?
I was one of those people that I had learned you ask to do things like instead of being voluntold, like you are
Yeah,
like,
you
sure, I'll do
volunteer.
that. Like
Yeah.
I volunteered. And so I ended up always getting pretty cool, even in basic training in AIT, I'd be like, yeah, I want to do that. Like I'll do it, whatever.
Yeah.
Um, because I had learned through watching and trying, that if you just stood up and said like, "Oh, I'll do that," like
hmm
you ended up getting kind of cool details or whatever. And it was me and PFC Cookie. I can't remember, but from my little the company that I was in, um, and we just stuck it out, and I dropped probably like I think I was 145 when I started, and I wanted to like get down to like a lower weight class.
hmm
So I mean, Mondays we would like run forever. We used to run on, if anyone knows about Fort Hood, Turkey Run Road. It's wild. It's like a hill that goes like straight up, and then you'd come like, so we would run, and then we would in the afternoon we would like spar. Tuesdays we would do like um whatever you call it, like I call it like P90X, but like, your strength, whatever.
Oh
Then
yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
you would
Like
jump rope.
core type
Yes,
exercises.
yes.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
then it would kind of just like go all the way down the line, and even Saturday we would work out.
Yeah,
Um,
that's cool.
and like I said, I learned that I was not going to be a professional boxer, but I learned a lot because it was the first time I'd ever done like other than swimming, but like an individual sport.
Yeah.
Um, got knocked out one time, also by a guy who we were sparring. He didn't have his cup on. I ended up hitting him and then,
Yeah.
and it was accidental, but he uppercutted me. And that was accidental on his part. So it was wild. It was a really good, I loved it. I really did. Like I loved like, and like I said, was not good. Didn't make it to the, they do a whole tournament. but I
Yeah.
was like X'd out of the tournament before like they even listed the people. But
Yeah.
my company, they were super proud of us. Like they came out and showed, I think there were like 1,500 people like in this arena, whatever, to watch. It was a big thing. Fort Hood
Yeah.
always was really big into these boxing tournaments. And so getting to meet different people, and it was an experience for sure.
Yeah.
And
I
then the
served
Fort
with
Hood,
a. Go
yeah.
ahead. Go
Oh,
ahead.
the Fort Hood. So that was in the tournament was in September, and then the Fort Hood shooting was in November. So it was kind of like
Yeah.
boom, boom, boom. It was a very, yeah. And then back then, it was so 2009, it was President Obama
Yep.
came and did a big thing that we all went to, like a memorial ceremony.
Hmm.
Um, and that was, I guess, your first experience. I'd lost another friend from high school who had joined the military too, but he died in a motorcycle accident. But when you're
Hmm.
18, 19, 20 years old and you start realizing that people are dying, it's one of
Hmm.
those like real eye-opening times in your life, I think. Like
Yep.
that point I was a mom. So I was thinking to myself, like, man, this is a lot to,
Yeah.
I was a baby. But go ahead.
So you joined the military right out of high school,
Oh
right?
yeah, I graduated June 27th, 2006, and then I was in basic training in the end of July.
Wow.
So I mean,
I
that's it. I had no
yeah,
other experience in the world, you
yeah,
know?
kudos to you, man. Kudos to you because I joined later. I think I was like 21 or 22, so I had I just don't think like mentally people like I don't agree with I mean if whatever if you as a child or as a young adult that's something you choose to do then so be it. But like I don't think people are developed
No, they don't have a clue.
mentally
Yeah, yeah.
to join straight out of high school, man, because you haven't experienced the work, you haven't
No,
experienced
anything.
anything,
No. And
right?
I
Yet.
learned, yes, I was very, and I still am sometimes. I have to catch myself like being naive, really.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was
Yep.
very naive. So I was the one that like, hey, can you find the box of grid squares? Can you like, you know what I mean? I had to write a report one time. My first sergeant had me at Fort Hood. There was a place called Wild Wasabi,
Uh-huh.
and we would all go out to lunch. That's the one thing I miss a lot about the military, but I miss the lunch breaks. I felt like we had a really good, like, you had a long time for lunch. And I
Yeah.
feel like in the civilian world, it's like not appropriate for you to like spend an hour and 15 minutes at lunch, but like in the
Yeah.
military, it was fine. Um, when you're in garrison, it's okay. But we went out to the wild wasabi, and everybody was like, "Sarah, don't touch that. Don't touch that tree." And I was like, "Okay, why?" And they were like, "That's sacred. That's wasabi. Like you can't touch that." And I was like, "Whoa, okay." Like so. Then I got back,
That's
and my
funny.
first sergeant made me write a report on what wasabi was actually. So that was the whole thing.
That's
Yeah,
funny. That's funny.
yeah.
Yeah, I remember having to get the mag stretcher, which don't even get me started on that story. And then I remember my one of my gunnies was like, "Hey, I need you to grab the keys to the Hummer." And keys don't, Hummers don't have
Right.
keys, but I didn't know. So I was a little naive too. But yeah, like I couldn't have I don't think I would have made it had I joined right out of high school. Like I think I joined when it was right for like me,
Right, right,
whatever. But
right.
yeah, kudos to you for joining so young. Um
Yeah.
so what and now when did you deploy? You went to Iraq?
So, yeah. So in 2010,
Okay.
Operation New Dawn, we were supposed to be getting out, and that was a lie. Like that was,
Like moving out of Iraq, right?
yeah.
Right,
So
right,
there
right.
was, Enduring Freedom, and then we're
Yep.
moving into Operation New Dawn. This is what we're doing. We're packing up, and we're like leaving. We're not going to be in Iraq. We're not going to, and I went through an experience. I wasn't there very long, about 79 days, I think.
Hmm.
And I was sent back. And then I got out pretty shortly after.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. I got injured. My back was hurt. And I had a lot of what I now know is PTSD.
Hmm.
I was having panic all the time. I was like I couldn't get my heart rate under control. I wasn't eating. It was terrible. It was
Mm-hmm.
so, but yeah, I was there. It was a shithole. I do not recommend. It's not yeah.
Yeah, Iraq sucked. I mean, I personally have never been to Iraq, but I've been to Afghanistan, and people are like, "Well, what was Afghanistan like?" And I was like, "I wouldn't wish it upon my worst enemy."
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
Mhm.
you're just in the middle of fucking nowhere,
Yeah. Mhm.
So.
And they live different.
Oh
That's
yeah.
for sure. Like that's a big culture shock. That's a
Oh
very,
yeah.
and the smells are different. Everything is different. It is very
The
different for sure.
it's speaking of like when you talk about like the smells and sounds of Iraq and Afghanistan, it's so funny. I had never so when you go to when you're doing the workups and when you're in the Marine Corps to go to Iraq or Afghanistan, for us it was Afghanistan, but you go to what's called CAX, which is um it's called Mojave Viper, so it's out at
Okay.
29 Palms, which is in California, which is in the middle of fucking the
Yeah.
desert in California, and they
Yep.
call it 29 Stumps, and it's
Okay.
literally just nothing but fucking palm trees when you roll in the main gate, and then it's just desert.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like one of the culminating events whenever you are kind of wrapping up the Mojave Viper or CAX or whatever the hell you want to call it. You go out to this FOB, which is a forward operating base that they mock up, and there's a town, and you essentially like it's like kind of like role play. So there's
Oh
there's
yeah. So the
actors
army,
and
we do that too. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And
yeah,
yeah, we do that too.
but
I get what you.
whenever they take you out there and they start doing the call to prayer at the fake mosque that's like across
Mhm.
the street from the fob. I was like, what the fuck is that noise? And my buddy was like, that's the call to prayer. And I was like, oh. I'm like, we have to listen to this shit? And they're like, yeah,
Yeah.
dude, like they're trying to get you ready because you're gonna hear this when you go to
Oh yeah.
Afghanistan. And I was like, fuck that shit.
Yeah.
But
Very,
every
very, very different.
yeah,
For
yeah, yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
I was telling somebody at work the other day, like how in like the movies, like war movies, like Black Hawk Down or American Sniper or Lone Survivor or whatever, they show you the village, and then they show you the elders or whatever, the Afghanistan folks, and then
Mhm.
there's usually a gentleman that's being in a truck bed that's attached to a donkey, and that is their like horse-drawn carriage. It
Yeah.
legit is like that, or at least that's what it was like whenever I went to Afghanistan. I'll never forget it. I saw this guy with one of those truck beds made into a horse-drawn carriage, and I was like, "Holy shit, they do exist."
This is for real.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Just yeah, the bazaars are bizarre.
yeah,
And you have a
yeah.
lot of younger Afghan or not Afghan,
Iraq,
Iraqi
yeah,
people running around. And the elders don't want them, and they love American women because they think that, whatever we don't look like and they would want to speak to us.
right,
And then the elders would like get after them and like yelling at, there was just, so it's a whole different world.
yep,
It really
yep.
is. It was, and so I was, what, 21? Yeah, I was 20. So I was still a baby. And so that was different again.
Yeah. So did you get out when you were 21 then?
So I got out when I was 20, so 2011, so
Okay,
22.
22. Okay.
Yep. And that's when majority of the things that I had, that's where my life started. Not that the
Mm-hmm.
military, it was a big, huge part of my life, especially like the friendships,
Mm-hmm.
building that like family. But I will say when I got out, that's kind of where the story of Sara begins for the second time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what was it like when you got out? If you don't mind
So
sharing
no,
that.
no, 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 no. Like I said, I got hurt. I hurt my back.
Mm-hmm.
So there was, that was when they were giving out opiates like candy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, I realized that it was not only helping my back pain, but again, here I am. I don't think I have PTSD, really. I think that, I am going through the motions kind of. I decided I was going to hair school, which was like, okay,
Nice. Yeah.
not my thing though. I like getting my hair done, so it
Yeah,
wasn't
not
my
not
thing.
doing it.
But the more and more time went on, the more and more my addiction to these opiates got worse and worse and worse and worse. I was going at that point to the VA to talk about a surgery, and this guy in Syracuse, it was my like that was who I was going to. He said, "You're too young to have this back surgery. Like what you need to do is this, this, and this." And pain management was part of it. And I went into a
Hmm.
pain management doctor, and doctor, I can't remember his name, but he was like, "You have no idea how addicted to these pain pills you are. I don't think. Like I don't think you understand the severity quite yet." And I
Hmm.
thought, no. And I remember trying to go like one day without taking them. And it was my kind of my wake up like, oh, wow, I'm going to have to take these forever. But what I didn't know was it was helping me with my mental health. It was
Hmm.
like a behavior that was helping in that way, not in a obviously a good way. But all of my symptoms of PTSD were so masked underneath it. Um, that it was I felt like everything was fine. Everything was
Hmm.
okay. Um and everything was always okay. And at the same time, my husband and we've been together for ever 16 years. We've been married.
Very nice.
He
Congratulations.
also thank you. He also got into opiates.
Hmm.
And all of a sudden he was going to prison. Which was a that was a big thing.
Hmm.
I was going to be alone with our two kids.
Hmm.
Um And my mom was like, hey, you need to get a hold of yourself. Like, I don't think you see what other people see, but like, if you don't get a hold of yourself, and that the prison sentence came with, we were evicted from our apartment. There was a lot of things. All the things were going
Hmm.
on. And my dad had let me move into his house with these kids, but I still was not seeing how bad the addiction was getting.
Hmm.
Somewhere between him going to jail and um, me moving into my dad's house, there was a short period of, well, it's too expensive to buy opiates now. So let's just see what heroin's all about. So heroin became a everyday problem.
Hmm.
Um, and then my mom, like I said, she was like, I'm going to take away your kids. And for me, that was my rock bottom. Um, and so I went to the VA, and again, instead of being met with, all right, you have a I wasn't using to a point where a lot of people, I don't, in the addiction world, we don't like play tit for tat, but I was doing it to maintain, to not be sick. So I
Hmm.
wasn't spending, I still had a car. I was very lucky I didn't lose my car. I was paying, some bills, whatever. But I was still spending money on drugs that when I would run out of the medication that the VA would give me. Um, and I got there and I was like, hey, this is what I need. Well, then I was placed on Suboxone.
Hmm.
So, and I'm not at that point, Suboxone was what helped save my life.
Hmm.
Um, and I thought, oh, I'm going to be on this forever. So I went to college. I was on Suboxone. I graduated, and then all of a sudden, probably like 4 years now, mind you, my husband's out of prison now. Things are going good. I think that our whole life is like everything's going to be okay.
Hmm.
Um, I start getting these terrible, terrible panic attacks. And I mean, like to a point where I wouldn't leave the house. It was
Hmm.
horrific. And so then I started giving up things little by little, but still was on Suboxone. Stopped taking my mental health meds, thinking, oh, that's what it is. Stopped smoking, stopped drinking caffeine, and went to a ton of different doctors to try and figure out what was going on with me. In the meantime, the doctor at the VA was like, oh, well, Suboxone can help with anxiety. Like, let's bump that up just a little bit. Um,
Hmm.
And I went to finally an endocrinologist who had told me, like, well, nobody ever likes to tell people this, but Suboxone can cause side effects that mimic Graves' disease. And
Hmm.
you look like I was 120, 115 pounds. It was bad. I'd
Yeah.
gotten down to a weight that was just disgusting.
Hmm.
And he was like, and I think your endocrine system is screwed up. Your adrenal gland functioning is like not, something's not right.
Hmm.
So once I learned through like the testing, like that was what it was, and it was caused from Suboxone, I took this huge leap and said, okay, well, I want off of it and I want off of it today. And if anybody knows anything about that medication, it's like methadone. It's 3% of the population gets off of it and 97% does not.
Yeah, yeah. It's like almost like nicotine.
It it was
It's
horrific. It
extremely
was
difficult to just quit.
yes.
Yeah.
So I went to ECMC in Buffalo because that was
Mhm.
where the detox was. Did that for about 4 days. They tapered me down on methadone until on June 24th, I was let go out into the world.
Mhm.
And that was 5 years ago, almost, yes, almost 6 years ago. And when I tell you the withdrawals were like horrific and they would not stop, on the 49th day, the VA decided, hey, you know what? You have not really dealt with any of your PTSD issues. So let's send you to this PTSD clinic in Batavia
Mhm.
and let's try to kill two birds with one stone while you're like still, because withdrawals last for a long time from
Yeah.
Suboxone. Like, not
Mhm.
the physical stuff is over probably within, 20 days. But real true blue, your brain, I've been to a neuropsychiatrist who's told me that your brain, after taking Suboxone for years, it takes 7 years for your brain to like go back to normal. And I'm not even at the 6 year mark. I'm much better, obviously.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, but I went to this PTSD clinic, and that is where I really started to work through things that I didn't even know were wrong with me, I
Mhm.
guess. And that place kind of opened a door and a new, shed a lot of light on things. I learned a lot about myself.
Mhm.
And then what else happened? Oh, while I was there, I got a phone call from Directions and Independent Living, and that was when I got the job for the peer support for Allegheny County. So I knew that, like, okay, once I leave here, I have a job to go to, and that's where my love for um, helping veterans, and that was when I knew like that was what I was supposed to be doing,
Yeah.
and um, I did really, really well. And then my dad died 3 years
Sorry.
ago. That's okay. But I was super close with him. He was one of those, like, even in the depths of addiction, would
Mhm.
still not treat me like a second class citizen, was very, he talked to me, he loved me through it. I had some really bad days. And he was the one that I attribute staying clean, and I wasn't going to go back and use, and I didn't. That was 3 years ago. But couldn't, I couldn't separate grief and PTSD. They were
Mhm.
so intertwined in my mind that I was like, hey, I think I need to go back. So I went back to Batavia to the PTSD clinic, did another like 4 week stay there. And that was when I decided it was time, through help of Western New York Heroes, to get a dog. And that has what has really changed my life, to be honest with you. That's the part where, you know, that's where
Yeah.
it gets good. That's where the good stuff is. And I've had a lot of great good stuff. There's still bad days, but
Mhm.
yeah, the good stuff outweighs the bad now.
So you've been sober for how long now?
I've been sober off Suboxone for almost 6 years. And then prior to
Outstanding.
that, I was on Suboxone for about four and a half. So long
That's a
time.
big that's a big deal. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
a big very big deal. I don't think people give them their I don't think people give themselves enough credit sometimes when it comes to like,
Yeah.
kicking
Yeah.
an addiction, especially something so severe.
Yeah.
Um, like first of all, thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
Uh, that is the point of this podcast, is to get, your story and other folks' stories out there, and to hopefully have veterans and other folks realize that you can do it. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's
You.
not going to be easy.
Yeah.
It's difficult. Every day
Hmm.
is a struggle for
Yeah.
sure. And I'm not speaking, like, I'm not trying to speak for you
Oh, yeah.
in your in with the addiction or whatever like that. But like, even though drugs may not be a part of my story, like, it's still a struggle for me on a daily basis, just with
Absolutely.
PTSD and all that stuff too. So it's like, I think that, like, again, like, if you can do it and if I can do it,
Yeah. Every
anyone
day you got to
anyone
get
can
up
do
and
it.
you got to, yes, yes.
Yeah.
And that is where, so I'm big on, I found my higher power. My higher
Hmm.
power is God.
Hmm.
And when I tell you that God's grace is the most amazing thing, and that there is no way without Jesus Christ I could have ever, this is, I'm living on that grace. And I
Yeah.
like to tell people, um, because it's, looking back and then, like I said, discovering the PTSD aspect of it, and then realizing, because I, even when I went to the PTSD clinic, I said, I'm not like these people.
Hmm.
I'm not depressed every day. I don't want to kill I'm terrified of dying. Well, doesn't that end up being part of my trauma that I never
Yeah.
even knew? You know what I mean?
Yep.
There are things that, and so then learning that part of it, and learning, and then getting set back with the death of my dad, or thinking it was a setback, but then realizing, like, wow, I'm strong, because I'm not going to go back to using, and I'm
Hmm.
choosing the tools that I've been given. And then, like I said, the dog program came, and that's when, that opened my life up to something totally unexpected. And because I was like, no, I told our bosses, I was like, no, I don't think so. And they're like, I think that this will be something that would be good for you. And I was like, oh, somebody else needs it more than I do.
Yeah.
But yeah, anybody can get better. If I can get
Yeah.
better, my husband is better. If we can get better, and you can and every day I'm so proud of what I do. I'm proud
Hmm.
to be a part of helping other people. I heal, I believe, through healing others, or helping
Hmm.
heal others. That's a big part of, um, all of it for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. No, I agree. Do you want to talk a little bit about your service animal and kind of?
Yeah. Yeah. So I have October. October is actually named after the month that I came home from Iraq. Um, he is a golden doodle. He's precious. I think he's the
Hmm.
cutest one out of all the Positive for Heroes dogs.
Yeah.
He didn't do the jail program because he came about a little bit before that kind of went
Yeah.
down. Um, and he was my house animal prior to doing the training.
Very nice.
Never thought he was going to pass and graduate, but he did. But he gives me so much confidence. I can go out and, be out by myself, where I struggled with that for a long
Yeah.
time, like not leaving the house, and not, and now I'm confident enough to go out and try to give that gift to someone else. And that's what it is to me. It's a gift. I'm very humbled. I'm very, yeah, October's, yeah, it's the best thing that could have ever happened to me. And so when
Very
I
nice.
moved here, I had to work. I didn't have to work. I chose to work. For the first time, I worked with civilians, at a place called Walton Options. They were great people. Um, but when I tell you, I did a lot of, I was an independent living advocate, so I had to learn a lot about the ADA. Down here, there's a lot of homelessness,
How long
because of
have
the
you been in
weather.
Georgia,
Um,
if
it'll
you
be
don't
three
mind me
years
asking?
in September.
Okay.
So about 2.5 years.
Okay.
So for about a year and 6 months, I did the Walton Options gig. I was doing these things, working with people in the disability community.
Mhm.
Every once in a while, there would be a veteran that would come through and that I'd be able to help. But it was not, it was like a little hump over my, like, what I really wanted to do. And I would call and tell our bosses, like, hey, I think we should do this here. I think that this would be something great. And so they gave me an opportunity to start doing the Positive for Heroes stuff and getting veterans and stuff down here. So that's been, again, just such a blessing, such a great thing to share it. Because working with civilians was very difficult for me. It tore my heart up. A lot of the times I would go under the bridge and give homeless people stuff when I wasn't even working. It was just very, so that was very unsettling. It was
Mhm.
not, my spirit didn't feel like it was, I was doing what I was supposed to because it was very heavy and I didn't want to
Mhm.
end up in a place where I wasn't leaving the house again. And so it just, that was, like I said, it just wasn't for me. They were great, but it was not my destination. It was just a
Yeah.
little, yeah, yeah,
I worked for I've said this before, and I'll probably say it 100 times after, but I worked for the homeless program here in Buffalo, the VA homeless program, and
yeah.
that was it was good, and then it was tough. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
Um, but yeah, like it got to a point where I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like it's more of a detriment to my soul than it
yeah.
is worth, you know,
It's hard.
whatever.
That is yeah. Kudos to you for doing it because it's a very, and I still like, so I'll still go out and I'm big. That's another thing that I learned about being clean and doing the whole, you find happiness in things that you never think that you would find happiness in. So
Hmm.
even though that was very difficult to do as a job, I still go out and do like a homeless pit count once a
Oh
year.
yeah,
I
yeah,
still
yeah,
try to get involved and volunteer and like I made some friends. I made some there everybody, and so
yeah,
I learned that that was also, because I didn't have a hobby either. I didn't know what I
yeah.
was, but volunteering is a hobby. And
Hmm.
and helping others is, so that's what I love to do. I love to be around people. I love to when, and I couldn't say that prior to having October. I
Yeah.
couldn't, and now I'm not. He's given me confidence to share my story too, which is wild, thinking like he doesn't even talk, but he does in a, he's such a, it's just such a help. It really
Yeah.
is. Yeah,
Outstanding. Yeah, that's awesome. I think that, and again, thank you for sharing and
absolutely.
trusting me and us with your story. So I that really it really means a lot that you were, you
Yeah.
know, able and
And I hope
willing
it
to.
helps someone else. I hope that it does. I hope that they can, that's what it's for.
Right. So now you're doing your the positive for heroes.
Yeah, down in the dirty South. It's a lot of fun. And there's other dog programs down here. Because the CSRA, the Central Savannah River area, is home to about 55,000 veterans. So that's the 13th largest populated area in the whole United States. So when I got down here,
Holy cow.
yeah, yeah. And the other dog program, I was like, oh, I don't want them to think that we're trying to like, but they were like, no, we need this. Like there, and so that's an amazing feeling too, being able to like, our mission is the same, right? It's just the way
Right.
we get there might be a little different.
Right.
So I think the hope is to at some point have dogs in some jails down here in Georgia, or South Carolina, because we're right on the border.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
There's a lot of people that come through here for the masters, and so there's a busy foot traffic kind of. So I think it could be really great. It's off the ground. It's trying to get there's a lot of other things that have not been established because it's just me, but
Right,
we're getting
right, right,
there
right, right,
little by
right.
little every
Oh
day,
yeah,
every day.
don't sell yourself short, dude. You're crushing it. You're crushing it. You're
Yeah.
only
And
one
so we're doing
person. You can only
our
do
second interview for another veteran on Thursday for a
nice.
vet down here, and they'll come up and get the dog, and then we have a trainer down here that is going to help us do like public access training, and he's wonderful. Like I've been
Outstanding.
very impressed. So,
Very
yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
So for those that are listening or watching, the Positive for Heroes program is a nationwide program
Yep. Yep.
run out of the organization that we work for, which is Western New York Heroes.
Yep.
So that program, it could be you could be in California and potentially, uh, right? Am I right in
Oh
saying that?
yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can put in an application and do all the paperwork and the interview and yeah. Yep.
So yeah,
Everywhere,
so
anywhere.
for any of you veterans out there that are listening or watching and you feel like a service animal would benefit you,
Hmm.
I would strongly encourage you to go to the Western New York Heroes website. And again, the name of the program is Positive for Heroes. Everything can be found right there on our website. So again, that program is a nationwide program. So like I said,
Yeah.
you could be in Florida, you could be in Georgia, you could be in New York, you could be in California. You'd obviously have to fill out the application and be accepted into the program and all that stuff. So, but
Yeah.
the
As of like, I think it's been about six months since they decided that
mhm,
it was going to be all over, and yeah, it's pretty awesome. It's very, very, yeah, yeah. And I don't know if you wanted to tell, but they train the dogs in correctional facilities, so that's near and dear to my heart.
yeah,
There's when you help save somebody that, because we don't know everybody's story, right?
yep,
People be like, oh, they're inmates, they don't deserve this, or you don't know their story. You don't
hmm
know. You would have never thought some girl that joined the military, coming from a middle class family with good parents and a good background, would have ever been a heroin addict, right? But
hmm
here I am,
yep,
and so there is redemption out there. And I think that by helping the inmates, that they're giving something to the veterans. What an
hmm
amazing feeling that has to be.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, the whole program is outstanding. Like Sarah was saying, the dogs are trained in local prisons or correction facilities here in Western New York. We have dogs that go to Collins. We have dogs that go to Niagara County. We have dogs that go to where's the other in
Green,
Green, and then there's one more, right?
Wyoming.
Wyoming. Yep.
Yeah,
So these
there might
dogs
be
are
some more.
trained, and they're veterans that train them too, that are in these correctional institutes,
Sometimes,
right?
sometimes.
Okay,
They're not all of the inmates are veterans, but some of them are. Yeah.
I got you. Cool.
But
All right.
it's to help keep recidivism down, to help so that people don't come reoffend and come back in. So these are
Right.
people that are going to get back out into society. That And what a skill. It's not easy. Like I always
Mm-mm.
try to tell people down here, I'll go, I'll see people and they'll say, well, how do you do this with a dog? And I'll say, I'm not the dog trainer. I'm just a dog handler. I know what to do with this dog. Like I
Yeah.
can't, so I'll call somebody for you. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's a skill. It's a talent. It
Yeah, for
takes a
sure.
lot of, it takes a ton of respect for the animal, yourself. You learn respect for yourself. So it's a
Hmm.
big thing. Yeah. It's
Yeah, for
great.
sure.
Yeah.
Um, Anything else that you want to share or talk about before we wrap it up? We've been talking for almost an hour and 15 minutes, give or take.
Okay.
Anything else that you want to say or talk about or share or any closing remarks?
No, is it still snowing out there?
It has let up.
Oh, okay, okay.
I gotta, when we get done, I gotta put on my snow gear and go out in the snow blow. So,
Well,
not
it's
really
about
feeling that.
65 here. So if you guys, want to come down. It
Um,
did snow here though. We had the
yeah.
hurricane and then it did
Yep.
snow and it was like snowmageddon because the southern nobody knows how to drive, which
Yep.
that was fun to see it. The
Yep,
kids
yep.
that have never seen snow, that was a wild thing to have kids like outside running around and they'd never seen
Yeah.
snow. And I thought, oh Lord, you
E-
didn't grow up in Western New York.
Even the people that live in fucking Buffalo don't know how to drive in the snow. It
True.
is
That's very true.
mind-boggling to me the amount of morons. You are like literally you're from
Yeah,
Buffalo and you
right.
know this happens every fucking year
Right,
and you
right.
still drive like with your fucking hazards on. Stop
Yep.
driving with your fucking hazards on.
Stop driving in general if you
Yeah,
can't
get
drive.
if you feel like you shouldn't be on the fucking road, don't get on the road. It's plain and
Isn't it
simple.
kind of wild how you only take one driver's test your whole life, but
Yeah,
like you have
it
to
is kind
test
of
for like other
wild.
things
Yeah.
like a lot. I think of that
Yeah.
all the time. I'm like, oh snap! Like, yeah, it's a
That's
wild
probably why
thing.
they don't do it because no one would fucking have a driver's license anymore.
Right,
But
right.
anyway, all right. Well, Sarah, thanks again. I really do appreciate you coming on here and sharing your story
Absolutely. Thank you for
and
having
being,
me.
of course, and being a willing participant.
Yes.
And again, I would like to do kind of like a follow-up interview, maybe in a
Okay.
couple weeks, couple months, or something like that.
Awesome.
If you're down, if the podcast, lasts that long. So again, thank you for being here. Thank you
Yeah.
for taking the time out of your busy day to sit down with me and share your story.
You're killing
Um,
it, dude. Thanks for having me.
oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that. I
Yes.
appreciate
Yes,
that.
sir.
Yeah. So, for those listening, this is Cole Johnson with Mojo with Cojo, and we'll catch you on the flip side.